Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining our webinar, Becoming an Empathetic Seller Using Financial Insights, a Sisters in Sales Masterclass sponsored by Salesforce. I hope that you and your families are staying safe, healthy, well, and sane during these times. These are challenging times for us, challenging times for businesses, and challenging times for our clients. And one of the most important things that we can do as professional saleswomen is to maintain relationships with our clients. And that means being authentic, being empathetic, and maybe even a little vulnerable. I'm Sherilyn Castleman. I'm head of education and growth for Sisters in Sales, and I'm a managing partner and an executive coach for CGI. I have a talent for teaching as well as a drive to sell, and I coach and train other executives and sales professionals, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you today. What we're going to cover today is how you can leverage the art of listening, qualitative and quantitative research to become a more empathetic seller. We're also going to bring it all together by finding that sweet spot between where our clients' needs are and what our company's values are, and then finish with a big bet matrix. The Q&A is open, so if you have any questions, our panelists will be able to answer those for you. So let's begin with something that will help our panelists. Is we'd like to know who you are. So if you could take a second and answer this poll to let us know a little bit about what your role is. So it looks like we have almost 30% other sales roles, about 40% are in business development, 20% are in account management, and about almost 18% of you are all sales professionals as well as sidepreneurs. Sisters in Sales is a community for women of color sales professionals. It's an opportunity to network, to find your community, to find sisterhood, and advance your career. There's a little over 2,500 women in the community currently, and so we invite you to join us. Chantel George, who's the CEO, is on the panel, so if you have any questions, just message Chantel. I also want to give a big shout out and thank you to Salesforce. Salesforce is sponsoring this webinar, and they're also our current blog series sponsor. If you haven't had a chance to read our blog, you can check out Chantel Baker's trailblazing story at salesforce.com, as well as Tamara Scarlett's story at also. She's also at salesforce.com. You can learn more about joining Salesforce at salesforce.com/careers. Salesforce is working with Sisters in Sales to build brand recognition amongst women of color while generating excitement about their open roles. You can read about the blogs on Sisters in Sales' website, as well as my website, Masterful Selling. So let me take a minute to introduce you to the impressive group of women who are joining me today. I had the pleasure of doing a walkthrough with these women earlier this week, and they gave me goosebumps. You guys are in for a real treat. These are just incredible women. First, Chantel George. Chantel, you want to wave at everybody? Chantel is the founder and CEO of Sisters in Sales. Previously, she had a senior level position at Yelp and JustWorks and Data Mirror, and she currently is with LinkedIn in the sales organization. She also created and is executed diversity programs at her previous companies and in her commitment to professionalism and diversity. She created Sisters in Sales because she noticed a deficiency when it came to women of color in professional sales positions. And she recognized that there was a lack of education about how lucrative sales can be. In addition, women of color not being able to get their foot in the door. And Chantel is doing an excellent job about changing that. Second, Monique Reyes. She's an account executive at Salesforce. Unfortunately, Monique is unable to join us. She's so sorry that she wasn't able to make today's webinar. She looks forward to joining us in a future panel discussion. We have Monica Roberts. Monica is a lead solution engineer servicing strategic accounts at Salesforce. She has over 7 years experience in business process improvement and systems transformation with primary expertise in CRM and opportunity to cash business scenarios. Next, we have Tamara Scarlett. Tamara, if you want to wave at everybody, she's an account exec at Salesforce, like I mentioned. She consults brands on the power of data and helps brands harness and interpret and apply data to make strategic business decisions. Ty Wiggins, Ty, you want to wave at everybody for me, is a financial coach and an account executive. She's a mission-driven professional with over 10 years of customer-focused experience across sales, higher education, and personal finance. She takes a consultative approach, finds satisfaction by educating and empowering her clients to success. And finally, I have Tisha Williams-Flynn. Tisha, do you want to wave at everybody? Tisha is an enterprise account manager at Apple. She's an authentic and passionate professional who has a people-first mentality, a leader with a heart, and she's a diversity and inclusion champion with over 17 years of pharma experience. So again, thank you to this dynamic group of women who are joining me today. So let's start with finding out, how has COVID-19 impacted your sales? So if you'll take this survey for me, has it had a great deal of impact, a moderate amount of impact, no impact, moderately worse, or a great deal worse impact on your business? It looks like that, wow, almost 70% of everybody are finding that sales are moderately worse. About 20% things are a great deal worse. Thank you. Well, before we started our session, you were invited to take our listening scale and to find out if you were an empath extraordinaire, if you were a lukewarm listener or a noisy novice. And looks like almost about 30% of us are lukewarm listeners. So it means we're good listeners, but we could be better. About 15% of us are empath extraordinaires. You are keenly attuned to what's going on with your clients. And looks like maybe about 12% of us are still kind of noisy novice. We're not very experienced. We're letting our self-talk get in the way of listening to our clients. So when you think about the art of listening has 3 levels. You listen to speak, you listen to hear, and you listen to understand. So if you refine your ear and become more closely attuned to your clients' priorities and their pain points, you can then put yourself in their position and figure out what's stressing them. And maybe even asking, does success even seem possible at this time? And what would that feel like? So level 1 listening is you're only listening to your internal voice. You ever go into a restaurant, you're at a restaurant, and the waiter or the waitress, or in this case, this business owner, is saying to you, I have asparagus soup today, and it comes with sharp cheddar cheese. And you're thinking to yourself, do I like cheddar cheese in my asparagus? And she says, we've also got dumplings. And you're saying to yourself, I wonder if they're pan fried. You are listening to your inner voice. And a lot of us sell that way. When our client is talking, we're waiting to talk. We're waiting to answer. We're waiting to answer their objections. We're not really listening. Level 2 listening is you are focused on the other person. You are intently listening. You may even be paying attention to their body language and some of their facial expressions. But let's look at how do we take it to the next level. The next level is global listening. And global listening is when you listen to the words, the feelings and the thoughts that are behind the words. You're listening to the energy. You're listening to their emotions, their body language. You're also listening for themes that may be reoccurring or even some tones. So I'm going to give you a chance to practice your level 3 global listening. What I want you to do is listen for values, emotions, themes, energy, and tone. But before we do that, I'm going to ask Ty to tell us a little bit about what she did when she was listening to one of her clients. Ty?
Thank you so much. So empathetic listening is obviously one of the most important pieces for us as salespeople. And one specific instance that I can think of is when I was working with a client who we were working on her spending plan. And my goal was to have her automate her savings so we could build up her emergency fund. She didn't have a cushion. I had to get that in place with her. So we're going through the plan and we get to the point about the automation. And I'm like, how do you feel about this? And she was like, I think it's going to be okay. And her voice was in like a completely different register than it normally is. So I took time to kind of dig in a little bit and ask a little more. I'm like, what about this is not okay? Because I'm hearing that it's not. And it wasn't the idea of actually saving. It was her not having the control of when the money was going out because she was still getting everything in order. So I told her, I'm like, the ultimate end goal is to get you to a point where we build up the savings. But if you want to have more control and manage this process manually, I'm fine with that. So it's really, for me, in that instance, it was a matter of hearing what she was saying, finding out what she was not saying and what was hiding behind there, and then coming to a solution that worked to get us to the end goal without stressing her out.
Thanks, Ty. That's a great example of how you listened, that control was important to her. And if you just focused on the savings, she wouldn't have moved forward. So great story. Thank you for sharing that. So what I'd like to do is we're going to challenge everyone now to actually practice level 3 global listening. I want you to, in this exercise, I want you to listen for values, emotions, themes, energy, and tone. One of the most important things when we're listening is presence. We want to be present in the conversation. And one of the ways that I'm present is I do something called box breathing. You breathe in 4 counts, you hold it 4 counts, you breathe out 4 counts, and you hold that for 4 counts right before somebody starts talking. So remember, you're listening for values, emotions, themes, energy, and tone. Chantel, please take a minute or two and tell us about your most recent trip to Mexico. Now, before she does that, everybody take a deep breath in, 2, 3, 4, hold it, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, hold it, 2, 3, 4. Turn on your listening skills. Chantel, tell us about you.
Okay, so I went to Mexico City last year and it was my first time going, and it was pretty unreal because I had heard so much about going to Mexico, and I decided to take a chance and go against my traditional trips, which is usually the Caribbean or Europe. So I get there and I'm doing all these Airbnb experiences, and I'm just doing it all. I'm going into it with from a place of yes. I'm eating crickets. I'm eating all of these tacos. I'm going out all night. I'm trying all these margaritas. I'm just doing everything. I'm riding bikes. I actually rented a bike to ride throughout the city. And I learned so much about the culture from having that approach. And I really had a great time. And I hope that everyone on this line considers going to Mexico City, or if you've already been, go back again, because it's an awesome experience.
Thank you, Chantel. Great story. I love visiting Mexico, and it's great that you were able to share that. So what I'd like to ask you to do now is to take this poll and tell me, what did you hear? Did you hear Chantel's values come through? Did you hear her emotions? Were you able to identify some themes that came through? What about her energy? Were you able to pick up on her energy? So let me know which ones did you pick up on? We're doing that. I'd like to ask one of the panelists, what values did you pick up on from Chantel? Did anybody pick up on Chantel's values?
In listening to Chantel, I think the value that I heard come just through her entire story was just the value of being open
Okay.
to experience.
Okay. Excellent. What about emotions? Did anybody pick up emotions on Chantel?
I heard a range of emotions as she went. When she was telling the story initially, I could sense that there was some trepidation about initially going to Mexico. But then as she started to describe the experience itself, there was excitement. She was reflecting on how amazing it was. So it was a shift as she moved through the story and in the timeline as well.
Very nice. As you can see from the poll here, everybody, Chantel, picked up on your energy. Nice job. A lot of people picked up on your tone. One of the things that I picked up on is Chantel likes adventure. Even though her voice, you notice her voice got quieter when she talked about riding the bike. It was a little scary for her, but she's an adventurer. And so those are things that you want to pick up. That's what you want to do with your clients when you are listening, is you want to listen between the words. One of the things that you also want to do with your clients is ask permission. right now, because so much is going on, it is okay to ask permission. One of the things that I say to my clients is, I would say is, would it be okay if I shared an idea? Do you know what success even looks like? Are you ready for ideas? If not, will you let me know when you are? So when you're listening to your clients and what they're going through, you don't have to have all the answers. Sometimes just saying silence or saying what else is one of the best things that you can say. So when you look at the relationship, I think relationships are the most important things with clients. And one of the ways to build relationships with your client is being an empathetic listener. The other one is just immersing yourself in your client's world. If you immerse yourself in your client's world, you will build your relationships. You'll connect more higher up the organization and shorten your sales cycles. You can find hidden business opportunities as well as build confidence. So let's move on to the next area where we talk about immersing ourselves in our client's business. So what can you discover about your customer's world? So I challenge you to look closely at these logos. And do you see something in a logo that maybe you haven't seen before? So let's start with the Tostitos logo. Do you see the chip and the salsa in between the two T's? How about Amazon? I know that a lot of people see the smile in Amazon, but did you know that Amazon's logo says that they deliver everything from A to Z? Goodwill, one of their values is self-respect and independence, and that's what that smile represents. Do you see the G, or is that a smiling person? I know that I think one of the people on the panel has said that they had been eating Baskin Robbins for all their life. And what did you see? Somebody on the panel, what did you see that you'd never seen before?
That was me. I said I had never seen the 31.
Right, there's a 31 in that one. Absolutely. FedEx is about delivering straight, and you see this arrow here between the E and the X. How about the KISS between the K and the I on kisses? And if you haven't figured out where Cisco was founded where the Golden Gate Bridges are, and you see the bridges here. So sometimes if you look just beyond your company's basic business, you can gain some insight. Also, sometimes what I've done when things are as like they are now, going back to your client's mission or even their logo to remind yourself what was important to them when they founded their business. So to leverage your insights to get closer to your clients. So one of the ways to do that is with qualitative research. And I'm going to have the panelists tell you in a second here how they use qualitative research. But let me find out from you what qualitative research you currently do. So take a second and just tell me if you have used any of this qualitative research when you're prepping for your client calls. So it looks like about 80% of you use social media. About 50% of you have read the CEO annual shareholder letter, and another 75% of you read analyst reports or value line. So one of the ways to immerse yourself in your customer's world is through qualitative research. And for qualitative research, you want to look for the things that pop. And these are the pain, the opportunities, and the problems. And a question that I frequently get from clients is, Sherilyn, what's the difference between a pain and a problem? Well, I will share with you that I broke my foot. I fell off my bicycle last summer, and I was in pain. I had fractured a small bone in my foot. I had the opportunity to go to physical therapy, but I chose not to. By the end of the summer, I was unable to walk, and that pain became a problem. So when you look at it with clients, we recently on Financial Fluency Friday looked at Coca-Cola's 10K, and Coke was talking about how their sales of one of their most profitable products is down. So that's their current pain. If you as a salesperson have an opportunity that you may be able to help raise awareness or help in marketing their most profitable product, that will prevent them from having future financial problems. That's just an example of what you can do. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to have Monica Roberts and Tisha Williams tell us a little bit about how they use qualitative research.
So at Salesforce, account planning is what we call it. It's a very critical part in our sales cycle, and it's something that we do in an iterative process where periodically, whether it be annually, quarterly, we plan for our account. And just in doing so, it involves, like you say, immersing ourselves in our clients' world. That involves reviewing their financial statements, stakeholder letters, analyst reports, and then embedding ourselves on site where we can, just to conduct deep listening and exploration through side by sides. And so this has proven to be very beneficial because it provides us some level of credibility. I have a client that happens to be a leader in their industry. And in being a leader in their industry, a lot of times they think that they have it all, they know it all, and that's great. But when approaching them, we like to come to the table with, facts, whether it be through their financial statements or analyst reports, and that gives us some level of credibility in order to be able to establish ourselves as a trusted advisor.
Thank you. That was excellent. I appreciate you doing that and sharing about how you become a trusted advisor. Next, we're going to hear from Tisha and then Tamara. Tisha, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you've used CEO letters in prepping for your client calls?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. So the way that I look at CEO letters is that it's a way that they're telling us a story, right? They're telling us, the audience, which includes employees, stakeholders, partners, anyone that's interested in their company. They're telling us who they are, what their long-term vision is, what drivers and barriers there are, what opportunities there are, and you can really glean some qualitative traits from these letters. But ultimately, you get insight around their priorities, around their areas of focus, and then you align that with your own company's offerings. And that's where you tie the thread, either if you're trying to prospect or if you're trying to continue a conversation. And then I think the other layer to that is if you can look for ties to your own personal experience or passion, and you're able to couple that with what your company offers, that just takes it to the next level. So for me here at Apple, I support our enterprise companies in the life sciences or pharmaceutical space. And so in these letters, the low-hanging fruit, if you will, or the obvious places to focus might be clinical trials or research and development. And those are, very valid, but I like to think outside of the box and look for other things that might be unexpected. So manufacturing might be an example where Apple has some clear use cases and success stories that we can speak to, or environmental issues even where Apple has taken a clear stance, but it might not be expected from our customers that we're coming to them to have a conversation about this. And then lastly, one area that I've had success is even talking about inclusion and diversity. So if I see, in the rare case that I see that in a letter, and also knowing that that's a huge passion area of mine and where Apple also focuses, that has gotten me in the door and actually expanded my network in a customer.
Thank you, Tisha. I love your idea about diversity. I have never thought about looking up diversity in reading a CEO letter or any information on a client. Tamara?
Yeah, so I actually really want to hone in on the part of the story that's around social media and the reason why that's so important for a business. So I think social media is unique because it's quick updates about what your brand is doing. And it's really important that we understand the position of a brand. So a social media presence is their brand's equity. They want you to know specific information about what new products are being released, who is being hired inside of the company, what shareholders are thinking about the company. And this is your opportunity to get updated consistently, whether that's on Twitter or Facebook or on any other social media channel that you use, to understand how the brand positions themselves. And to take that a step further is also understanding how their consumers are interacting back with the brand. So as a consumer, these people are liking, disliking, trending, and understanding how people are interacting with the brand is also going to help you frame your conversations when you talk to your customers. And I want to just take it to one last pillar, and this is something that I love doing beforehand, is that even an individual is a brand. And before I go meeting with any of my customers, I like to look up what their social identity is. Are they speaking on any upcoming panels? Are they affiliated with any nonprofits? What are their passions? how do we continue to understand who our customers are, not only on a brand level, but as an individual level, so that we can create mutual connections that far surpass just one business cycle?
Thank you. Great advice. I love the idea of that every individual you're meeting with is also a brand. So thank you for sharing that. That was awesome. If just to kind of, so now let's look at quantitative research. So we're gonna jump into 10Ks, 10Qs, and 8Ks. By immersing yourself in your customer's world, you understand their perspective. You learn how to analyze and think like them. And with this information, you can then tailor and develop your story and better connect with them. If you visit your customer's investors page or the sec.gov is where you can find these documents. The 10K is an annual report. We're going to talk about that in a second. The 10Q is a quarterly report. The Form 8K comes out whenever there's anything material going on. Usually it's a bankruptcy, a change of a CEO. However, given what's going on, I noticed, for example, on Marriott, they have filed 3 8Ks in the last 4 weeks. So if there's something going on, this is where you're going to find that information. So let's move on and talk a little bit about what a 10K is. A 10K is an annual report, but it's not that glossy, beautiful publication that they send you in the mail or you find on their website. It's masterfully crafted stories. Your 10K is what's required by the Security Exchange Commission. So the question that I have is, how often do you review your client's 10K? So if you could vote for me just here real quickly and let me know. Do you do it once a month when the quarterly report comes out? Do you do it annually when the annual report comes out? If you've never done it, or if you really didn't even know what a 10K or 10Q was, it's just to give us an idea, and the panel idea, a little bit about what we're talking to. So it looks like maybe about 25% of you read it quarterly, 10% of you read it annually. Almost 40% of you have never read one, and maybe 20% of you that this is a new term for you. So at this point, I'm going to ask Monica Roberts and Tamara Scarlett to tell you a little bit about their 10Ks and how they use them for their clients. Because the 10K and the 10Q are the most important client documents that many of us have never read.
So as I spoke, account planning is essential just to our role in our business. And so we do review the 10K. We review the 10K just to see a detailed yet summarized picture of clients' business. We want to assess what risks they have and then just understand their operation and financial results for the year. Looking at the 10K helps us to understand what their goals are, which allows us to be able to position our point of view when going into a client. One of the things that's really important to us at Salesforce is that we don't just walk in and just sell product. We make sure that we're selling value. And so looking at the 10K helps us to understand what it is that a company may be committing to for the year, or for the quarter, or even sometimes it's like a 3 or 4 or 5 year plan to its stakeholders. And so we want to make sure that we're able to support them so that they are successful. As you mentioned, looking at other periodic reports is very important, including, I guess, especially right now with business models changing given the current climate. And so staying abreast of those things, whether it be through stakeholder reports, podcasts that are coming out weekly from some CEOs, helps us to understand how we need to pivot with our customers so that we can help align with them to deliver value in this changing climate.
Thank you, Monica. I appreciate that. And if anybody has any questions about these documents, please just go ahead and jump in the Q&A and ask them of the panelists, and they will answer those. Tamara, I know that you use 10Ks a lot. You read these documents. Tell us a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, so personally, I think of a 10K as a blueprint, and I think of all of my customers as a place that I'm investing in. And sometimes it's whether I'm investing in stock or if I'm just investing time in them, I need to understand what their business is and how it's operating. So I use the 10K as a way for me to understand from the executive level what their key priorities are. And then I'm also able to disseminate that information to lower levels and supporting roles inside the organization to help move initiatives forward. Now, as you mentioned, the 10K can be a daunting, like, piece of work to go through, right? So it's 150 pages. Some people have up to 250 pages in a 10K. So I like to break it down into 5 really easy sections for people to understand, just so that you can get a high level understanding of what it is and what the impact is to the business. So the 5 sections I think that everyone should check out is the business section, which is an overview and an extension of a report that their CEO is giving out, their 4-page annual report or an executive letter. What it does basically is that point where it's telling a business what are the key initiatives inside that are going to happen, where expansion is going to happen, what they're seeing in terms of market competition, where they're going to put themselves inside of this very competitive ecosystem. The second is risk factors. And I think risk factors is where I spend most of my time. And the reason why I do that is because I'm able to see the inherent risks that this company is saying is concerning their business. And one of those risks could be COVID, right? So we're all being impacted by this. So how are we going to help our companies respond in a way that is going to put them as a market leader after this is all done? There's 3 more sections that we can go through, but it's financial data, which is just giving us an understanding of cash flow, budgets, balance sheets, understanding where the company is positioning themselves. Management's discussion, which I think is super interesting because that's exactly where the management is giving a recap of their beliefs and how the financials are being impacted, if there potentially could have a merger and acquisition coming down. And then any of the supplementary information is super important. As an added bonus, something that I really love looking at is also executive compensation. I think it's really interesting when a brand, compensates their executive based upon stock growth. It says a lot about how they're positioning themselves as a company. And I know that the CEOs make a lot more money than I do, so they have a lot riding on the growth. So if there is that tie in terms of compensation and stock growth, it's something that I really like to keep a narrow focus on and helps me position them as like a change agent of how we can bring the business to the future.
Thank you, Tamara. You sound like a 10K expert. We appreciate you selling not just how you use it, but the tips and what sections to read and being honest about how daunting this document is. Nice job. I appreciate that. Okay, so like I said, Tamara said Nike's 10K was 160 pages long. Here's the first page of what Starbucks look like. Starbucks is a little over 100 pages. Just like Tamara said, there are 4 sections: business, operations, governance, and financial are 4 sections of everybody's 10K. I know, Chantel, you have read 10Ks. Tell me what it was like the first time you read one of your clients' 10Ks.
So it's very similar to Tamara's experience. It's daunting. It's a lot of information. However, because I sell marketing, I'm looking at the line items of the business's expenditures, and I'm looking to see if quarter over quarter they are increasing and decreasing. And I'm leveraging that insight to determine how I prioritize this account, and whether or not they even consider marketing to be an important piece to invest in. So it's really helpful for me.
Okay, thank you so much. One of the things that I have done when I started reading a 10K is I came up with an acronym. I come up with lots of acronyms, is how I remember. And most of these sections are the sections that Tamara mentioned, but the acronym I use is ALARM. And so when I read a 10K, I can actually read a 10K, just overview in about 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, just by hitting these sections. You get a feel for what the company's focus is. So even if you're really busy and you have lots of clients, if you just read the alarms, the auditor section, they will talk about what they disagree with about what the company looked at. Legal proceedings, anywhere there may be sued or any product liability issues. The auditor's report, as Tamara mentioned, the risks. The management section is a critical section, and the very last one is financial statements. We'll talk a little bit about income and balance statement moving forward. One other thing I just want to point out is next week on Monday, May 11th, 10Qs, which is the quarterly report, comes out. This will give you the first insight to how your clients may be adapting their business strategies or navigating through what's going on with COVID-19. There was also a statement released by Clinton and Hinman, who are the executives of the SEC. So if you haven't looked at this, you might want to read what they're recommending. So we talked a little bit about 10 Qs and 8 Ks. Here's a couple things that you might find out by reading them. So remember that your 10Q is important for two reasons. One, it gives you insight to what is going on financially, operationally, and structurally with your client during COVID-19. And secondly, it helps you activate your empathetic perspective to selling. How do I need to reposition and change how I sell based upon what's going on? So now that you've learned a little bit about 10 Ks and 10 Qs, the question I have to ask is, how many of you will actually go out and review your client's 10K or 10Q? I will absolutely be on the SEC site Monday morning and actually look. I will definitely read it before my next client meeting. I probably will read it before my next client meeting. I'm not gonna read it, and I will definitely never read it, and I still don't know what a 10K or 10Q is. So it looks like, wow, almost 60% of you will definitely read the 10K or the 10Q before the next meeting, and 35% of you will read it on Monday. So kudos to you guys. Outstanding job for making a commitment to do this. So well done. Chantel, we can go home now. Our job is done. So let's talk a little bit more about strategic research and where you find these documents and how things have changed. Somebody said that they were I think the Shift F girl or Control F person. Who talked about that? Tamara, tell us a little bit about how you use that.
Yeah, so I think Control Find is such a great resource because if you need to hone in on a specific keyword or topic, per Chantel's conversation around key marketing initiatives, you can Control F to find those locations and actually be able to hone in on those specific conversation and understand the business's point of view on it. Another great way to think about this too is COVID-19 increases is that customers and CEOs are going to be curious on how they can get their people back to work. So using Control F to see what the priorities are and how the shift in workforce is going to change is a great example of that.
Thank you. That's a great tip. I had never thought about that. And someone else had another tip about how you break it down with your team. Who had the other tip on how you handle this daunting task?
We have account teams, and many times when we're going through these account planning sessions, because it is such a daunting task, we will divide it up. And it's oftentimes divided up around whatever your area of focus is. So we have specialists that look for certain things that might be relevant to the value that they can sell. And that tends to be a pretty remarkable effort. And when we come together, some things we find, we saw things in a different, from a different perspective that may equate to something totally different. But I think the divide and conquer tends to work for us.
Yeah, there's something else I can add to that. I always like to have a point of view going into any meeting. So if we're reading on the 10K, the values that they have in line or the new products they're looking at releasing, I think it always sets you apart when you start a conversation with, I know you're releasing this product. I know it's performed well in EMEA, so to speak. Let's talk about how we're going to help you advertise it, or let's talk about how my solution can help you solve these potential problems. I don't like to start discovery calls without that point of view, because I think immediately it allows our prospect to zero in on what we have to say, because we are reading to them in the same language that they're getting internally.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about the annual report, the CEO letter. The other one I wanted to just mention real quickly is a DEF 14A proxy. The very last page of this talks about executive compensation. And I know Tamara touched on it. That may come up in a 10K, but a lot of times I will go to this document and just read the last page. Again, this document can be 50, 60 pages. And the last page or two gives you kind of and if we have a great year, here's how the executives are going to get bonused. It's just a red flag for me of where their priorities are. Financial results drive strategic decisions. A universal financial metric that's important to executives is return on investment, or ROI. Now, ROI is a mindset. It's very specific to projects. And let me just share an example with you about a client that we calculated ROI. One of my clients, there was a $32 million client, And we had calculated their ROI of 7-to-1. So what we were saying is that for every dollar they spent with us, we were giving them $7 return. The client became so angry that we had communicated this out to all the markets that they were threatening to terminate the agreement. What I did was I asked them to give me a couple of months, and I sat down with our quants team as well as the quants team from our client, and we came up with a new algorithm for calculating their ROI. Now, this new algorithm took about 5 pages to define and explain, but they came up with a new ROI of 2.6-to-1. So when you look at it from a business standpoint, when we were communicating out that we had a 7-to-1 return, we were having the market presidents anticipate $143 million more than what they thought their return was going to be. This is why they were so angry. Now, I also want to say that there's a silver lining to this. When I later met with the president of North America, he said to me, Sherilyn, where can I invest $1 and get $2.60 back? And so as a result of it, they increased their spend by 20%, and 20% of a $32 million contract is over $6 million, it's about $7 million. And so not only were we able to save this client, we were able to increase their spend just because I understood the value of ROI. So a couple other things that I want to touch on just briefly is there are some executive metrics that you have to focus on and include. So we've talked about ROI. Time to value is another one. This is how long it takes. This is the amount of time before a new customer realizes a value from your product. OpEx and CapEx have to do with how expenses are handled. OpEx is how it expense on a day-to-day function basis, whereas CapEx is something that benefits in the future. There's a tax difference, and one example is just the difference between on-site storage and cloud storage. On-site storage is considered CapEx, and cloud storage is OpEx. So it's important to know that if you have any of these numbers, how to share them with the client. I know that Tamara talked on the financial area. If you can only learn 3 ratios or 3 metrics that you use with the financial section, that would be return on assets, and return on assets has to do with performance. So you get the numbers out of the balance sheet, and it talks about how, and it's just about how the client's performance is. It's net income over average assets. Return on equity talks about how the company is turning equity investments into profits. You get the annual return from an income statement. You get the shareholder equity from a balance sheet. Again, both documents can be found in the financial section of a 10K. And the final metric that I think is important is return on sales. ROS talks about operational efficiency, how much profit is being developed from every dollar of sales. If you calculate these 3 metrics and you compare them year over year for your clients, you can realize how good they're doing with their investments, how efficient they are, or how profitable they are. This is just one section. You don't have to be a financial wizard just to leverage this information. I want to pause for a second here and ask if anybody on the panel is doing anything different based upon COVID-19 with your clients. Are you doing any different type of prep for client prep right now?
Well, I would say that I'm being more intentional about looking at the news and specifically what's coming out around what my clients or customers are doing. So as I mentioned, I support enterprise clients in the pharmaceutical and life sciences space, which is obviously taking the forefront in everything that's going on. So I'm sure we all have Google alerts for our customers, but in addition, looking at what's happening on LinkedIn. And even if it's not a specific mention for my customer, I'm looking at what's going on in the industry overall, because usually if it's impacting another or a competitor, if you will, it's something that probably is going to be impacting my customers as well. And that helps to frame, you know, any follow-ups that I'm doing, any discussions that I'm having. So that has been helping in my prep as well. And I think Monica mentioned podcasts as well. Like that's definitely just listening to what they're, you know, what they're externally sharing. You can definitely gain a lot of insights as you are prepping. And just, even if you're not using it in your conversation, it's just good to know like what their frame of mind is and what their current priorities are.
I'd like to backdoor Letitia and just say, you know, just doing the research not only on the industry, but also on your customers' customers. I know one of my large customers is a food service provider that, you know, services many restaurants. And so understanding what's going on with those restaurants helps me to understand how my customer is being impacted. And so, you know, going into every conversation with that, you know, empathetic ear, because you never know, whoever you're talking to, they may be impacted. Maybe they don't have a job. Maybe they've been told their job is at risk. But I think, you know, just given the situation, it's very good to go in with, you know, some level of research, some level of news update, you know, for a full supply chain, just to understand how to position a conversation, even if it's a how are you doing, when talking with your customers.
Yeah, I mean, I can echo that sentiment because I think right now, this is not the time to sell. It's the time to create empathy and time to create understanding and trust with your customers. So I focus on the media vertical, and media sales are dramatically down right now. I think the latest stat is 40% of media sales are down because advertisers are, number one, afraid to position themselves in this marketplace against negative news. And two, a lot of advertisers don't need to advertise because their products are already flying off the shelves. So when you're thinking about large CPG brands, toilet paper, Kleenex, things like that, Reckitt Benckiser, who sells Lysol wipes, their businesses are doing really well. So I think really what we should be bringing the focus on the conversation is, how do we help get your people back to work, and how do we help get them back to work safely? So is there anything that we can do that's going to add immediate value to your business and make something easier for you or more convenient, or provide an opportunity for your team to be able to get something done more efficiently? And those are really the conversations that we're having. And a lot of the times it's also about giving leeway. So can we do a different contracting structure so that you're not giving revenue out currently, right? So that maybe we can bill you in a delayed structure, or can we rethink about what you're using and reuse what you currently have to solve for these new problems rather than bringing on additional new products? So for me, I'm having a lot of conversations around, let's understand what you have, let's understand what your obstacles are, and then let's think about a plan of how we can overcome it and make sure that your sales team or whoever you're working with, your staff, is back in the office safely when this is all over.
Thank you, Tamara. Great advice and great insight. Again, we want to listen to our clients. We want to be empathetic. We want to build those relationships and talk about caring. And you leverage both research as well as being an empathetic listener to do that. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about leveraging both the words, the qualitative, as well as the quantitative research in preparation for your client meetings. So let's just find out how many of you now are committed to doing both qualitative as well as quantitative research moving forward. So if you'll take this poll for us real quickly on what type of research you're going to start adding to your client that you may have not done in the past. So it looks like this audience, about 20% of you are going to do some industry research. 80% of you are going to check out the SEC documents, the 10Ks, the 10Q, and the 8Ks. 60% are going to find the CEO letter on the investor page and read that. And a whopping 40% of you are going to do financial research. So outstanding. Kudos to everybody for doing that. So next, how do we pull it all together? So let's look at the sweet spot. The sweet spot is this spot between your client's needs and interests and your company's value, the value that you bring. Big bets is a common phrase that I hear when working with Salesforce. And so we're going to talk about how to align your big bets and find that sweet spot. And remember that your clients are human and they only care about what's important to them. They don't really care about your product unless it aligns, or your solutions or your services, unless it aligns with their needs and their interests. One of the ways that you can bring this all together is by doing a big bets matrix. And this is one that I did for Starbucks with a client about a year or two ago. And so Starbucks big bets were the reserve roasteries, the high-end coffee shops that they were opening. They were opening shops in China, just about one every 15 hours, I recall. They were building digital relationships with non-Starbucks users. Now this worked for me. I wasn't a big Starbucks drink. I didn't drink Starbucks. I didn't visit Starbucks. I just couldn't really. And so what they did is they reached out with their app. And by using their app, I became a Starbucks customer. They also wanted to build their brand awareness. And they had an image issue within the African American community, and I learned about that on the 10K. And they also bought Nestle and wanted innovative products. You want to look at your company's big bets. Do you have a new business model? Have you improved your customer experience? Have you added business automation? Do you have a new disruptive technology, or have you adopted new trends? So let's say that you have something that's improving the customer experience, and Starbucks is committed to their brand image and improving the consumer experience in the African American community. You can now reach out to them and talk to them about this. So I'm going to ask Tisha and Chantel to tell us a little bit about how they use their big bets.
So one of the bigger areas that I use big bets is when I want to have a really strategic conversation with senior decision makers. Sometimes we deal with day-to-day folks who are helping us roll out certain implementations, or just assisting with making sure that the technology is fitting in with the overall organization. There are folks that we probably need to talk to expand on the deal, make the deal larger or make the deal more sticky. And the only people that would probably have a really serious committal to that are the people who are in the room when these big bets are being formed in the first place. So I make sure that my proposal is taking that into consideration, because I already know that if it does, that's a higher likelihood that that proposal will reach someone who is more senior, VP, director, or even as high as a C-level. So I think it's a really great tool to take a look at your products, take a look at your big bets, take a look at their big bets, come up with a strategy that you already know will force someone who might be a gatekeeper to disqualify themselves and bring this proposal up higher up the chain.
Thank you, Chantel. That was very helpful about how you use big bets. Tisha, do you want to share with us how you use big bets with your clients?
Sure, thank you. And really echoing a lot of what Chantel just mentioned, being very intentional about who you are speaking with and who you are looking to put your proposal in front of, making sure that you have the right people in the room is critical. So an example that I have is I had have a customer who was really focused on trying to gain a competitive advantage on someone. And they came to us with their problem of they really wanted to see how they could use technology to streamline or overhaul processes, right? And that seems simple enough, pretty straightforward. But we took that as an opportunity to actually have a broader discussion, get some more senior level folks in the room and figure out what is the true issue, what's the true problem, and is there something bigger that we can address that would be truly a win-win for both of us. So we got in a room, got the right people in the room, and we literally drew out a Venn diagram, kind of what you showed a few slides ago. And so on the one side, we had our customers' big ideas put out there. And there were a lot of big ideas, but not all of them were necessarily actionable, or more importantly, a place where we, Apple, could help directly. And we're very clear and transparent about these are the things that we do really well. And then there are some other things that maybe we don't, and we don't want to put ourselves in a position that we're not setting ourselves or the customer up for success. And then on the right hand of that Venn diagram, we listed out all of the areas that we do have strong capabilities. So services, augmented reality, machine learning, and things like that. And what we found is that sweet spot. So what's that big idea that the customer had that married or coupled very nicely with our offerings? And that gave us the sweet spot. That gave us a place to really hone in on where we could focus and simplify, which is one of our core tenets. And ultimately, it led to a much more strategic relationship with that customer, increased opportunities, and it's actually still paying dividends to this day. So that's an example of how I've used it.
Awesome. Thank you. I like how you also not looked at just your sweet spots, but you also were clear that you're able to say, we know that you're expanding in China, and this is not an area where we can help. So that's excellent. So you've learned a lot today about empathetic listening and financial fluency. We've talked a little bit about Sisters in Sales and Salesforce. And the next poll that I want to ask you is, what are you going to change as you move forward? So are you going to practice level 3 listening? Are you going to leverage research to connect more with your clients? Are you going to read more about the SEC documents? Are you going to visit Sisters in Sales and consider finding your community, joining and connecting? Are you going to consider coaching and training and check out Masterful Selling and look at getting an executive or a sales coach? Do you want to learn more about Salesforce and the career, or are you interested in all of the above? So I just want to share here that one of the things that I do whenever I attend a webinar is I want to look at, what do I want to do differently? Ty, what's one thing that you learned that you want to do differently?
I definitely want to spend more time doing research, not just on the social media, like on the branding side of things, but looking into companies' financials so I can maybe speak more to any pain points that are coming up and better align a solution with them.
Okay, thank you. That's awesome. So if you take out your smartphone and scan or take a photo of this QR code, you can learn more about joining Sisters in Sales. And as a member with Sisters in Sales, part of being a paid member, you have access to webinars like these, opportunities for networking events, discounted coaching, as well as discounted registration for our annual summit. You can also learn about working with me at masterfulselling.com, learn more about Salesforce careers at salesforce.com/careers, and always join or check out the community at sistersinsales.com. Again, I want to thank you and thank our panelists for joining today. And we will be sticking around to answer any additional questions that you have. I see that there are a couple questions still in the box that haven't been answered. And again, please stay safe, stay well, stay healthy, and stay sane. And again, thank you to Sisters in Sales for hosting this webinar, and thank you to Salesforce for sponsoring it.